Today we're going to talk about anxiety. Last week we talked, well, first of all, we are sponsored by Neighborly Nutrition, which is our secret underground bunker location located just outside Ada, Oklahoma. So we're on Highway 19 between Pickett and Ada. If you're in Ada, it's a whopping 3 minutes outside of Ada, so it's not that far out of Ada. And then we're also sponsored by True Medics Nutrition, and True Medics is our Cindy and I's brand of how we make medicine, and so that has some patented stuff in it. I hold the first issued U.S. patent on being able to manipulate a certain system for medical effect, and so True Medics is where we represent that intelligence. And we have something that we're hashtagging called Treat the Cause. So Treat the Cause is, we believe that the cause of most disease is pathogenic. So it's Z-bugs, right? And Z-bugs cause us a lot of harm and a lot of disease. It's also, processed foods, certainly. But we're all about trying to get to the cause and core of human disease and tell you the stuff that you won't hear from pharma or on TV. So anyway, here we go. Today we're going to talk about anxiety. Last week we talked about rest and relaxation. So today we're going to talk about sort of what are some of the consequences of not resting and relaxing. And that would be some anxiety. And a lot of us have anxiety. I do. A lot of us have anxiety. A lot of us get a little tweaky on the tweaky side, and I certainly do that. So I suffer from anxiety. So this was kind of I learned a few things on this dive. So I'll tell you kind of what I learned, which is always fun. But let's dive right in here and talk a little bit about anxiety. So according to Google, what is anxiety? And I like using this because I like just basically bridging, between kind of what's out there and what's real and what's not, and also kind of showing you guys how to discern through information, maybe a little bit. But anyway, what is anxiety? So anxiety is a feeling of fear, dread, and uneasiness. It might cause you to sweat, feel restless and tense, have a rapid heartbeat. It can be a normal reaction to stress. So again, everybody gets anxious, if someone's pointing a gun at you or something like that. For example, you might feel anxious when faced with a difficult problem at work. That's a little bit less benign of an example before taking a rest or before making an important decision, right? So we all know what anxiety feels like, right? But we shouldn't have anxiety to the point where, we are so anxious that a word from our spouse causes us to rip their head off, right? Or I mean verbally, or if we're so just on edge like all the time, that's just not healthy. And again, if you cross this line, I mean, I know when I cross this line, and I know when my anxiety is getting the best of me. But that's the definition of anxiety according to Google. And again, anxiety disorder is a medical condition. So, you can't call your product anxiety. Let's just put it that way. The FDA will come get you. All right. So what causes anxiety? Is it just, does all of a sudden, has God just cursed us with this condition where, we're anxious? No, it doesn't work that way, right? There has to be a cause. Again, there has to be a reason. You just don't go bad and become anxious all of a sudden. And it's not because it could be because you've been through some traumatic, things, right? But sometimes those things just set in motion, some people deal with very traumatic things very well. Other people deal with very traumatic things very poorly. What is the difference? Okay, so we're going to talk about that because again, God made us all pretty perfect. He kind of gave us all the same skills. So why would one person do it better than another? Well, let's talk that through because there's probably reasons for that. It's not, magic and mystery and woohoo. There's got to be reasons for it. So, what are dopamine and serotonin? Because we hear a lot about dopamine and serotonin and what do these guys do? Well, let's explore that a little and see if it's related to anxiety, shall we? So people often call dopamine and serotonin the happy hormones because they promote mental well-being, Dopamine, also known as the feel-good hormone, is associated with the brain's reward system and produces pleasant sensations. So when somebody likes that post on Facebook and you get that good feeling, oh, somebody liked my post. Ding! That's dopamine, right? So, and again, dopamine is being weaponized against you, believe me, in the very way that I just told you. But dopamine is more the feel-good hormone. And again, that's generated when we feel good about something, we get good feelings. Serotonin, on the other hand, is sort of our knob on our kind of anxiety versus, having good feelings of happiness and well-being. So serotonin can help increase happiness by alleviating depression and anxiety. Okay, so, well, that's interesting. Let's explore that, shall we? Okay. All right, so what does serotonin do? Well, serotonin is a crucial chemical for increasing mood and decreasing anxiety. Huh. So my anxiety is related to a chemical, and potentially I can control that, which we're going to talk about for the rest of the podcast. Yes, isn't that cool? So again, there's always a cause. That's why we say we try to treat the cause, all right? So what does serotonin do? Serotonin is a crucial chemical for increasing mood and decreasing anxiety. Researchers have found a clear connection between low serotonin levels and increases in depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. Well, what about that? All right, so, okay, well, if it's serotonin, then, give me some O, give me some O, right? Or what is basically affecting my ability to get serotonin into my brain so that I am not depressed and anxious? So could stuff happen? Could stuff happen where serotonin and doesn't get in my brain and I become that way? Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that. So serotonin is synthesized in serotogenic terminals from tryptophan. Okay, so now we're talking another chemical, but that's important, which competes with tyrosine and the branched chain amino acids for transport across the blood-brain barrier. So there's competition with tryptophan, which is the precursor for serotonin, across the blood-brain barrier in the brain. Huh, competition. That's interesting. So again, one reason why I might not be making enough serotonin, to fight my anxiety, would be I don't have enough tryptophan across my blood-brain barrier because of competition. So we'll explore that a little bit in a second. So tryptophan to competing amino acids ratio in depressive disorder. So could this be a thing, right? So what we're sort of speculating here, could it be a real thing? Could it have been studied before? Well, it turns out, yes, it has. And so I'll just read you down at the bottom. These studies strongly indicate that brain serotogenic function, so the amount of serotonin in the brain, can be distributed in depressed patients and thus lend support to the serotonin deficiency hypothesis in depression. So again, if you have a lack of serotonin, is that going to cause you to be depressed? Evidence has furthermore been presented which suggests that rather than a low brain serotonin level per se, the hypofunction may be associated with disturbances in adaptive and regulatory mechanisms. So for instance, postsynaptic serotonin receptors. So again, it's about, being able to get serotonin across your blood-brain barrier and into effective areas of the brain to be able to, let's say, manage or fight depression and anxiety. All right, so back to this again. So this is interesting. Tryptophan competes with tyrosine and the branched chain amino acids for transport across the blood-brain barrier. All right, well, that's interesting. So what are branched chain amino acids? Isoleucine, leucine, and valine. And what do? Well, they're required for, I'm not sure why I pulled that up. So I probably just need to define what branched chain amino acids are. So that's fine. But again, we're competing with these guys. Now, the other thing, oh, I know why I did. Because branched chain amino acids are also what bacteria eat, okay? And so if you had a bug, let's say in your brain, in your actual brain, then you could begin to have competition. So again, if they're pulling, let's say you've got a cell, right? So you've got a cell, your brain cell, your astroglial cell. So you've got a brain cell, and that brain cell might be infected with something. And if it is infected with something, that something probably wants to eat branched chain amino acids. He's going to use transporters to pull in amino acids, the GLUT transporters. There's competition for those between glucose and then amino acids. So again, if he's trying to eat amino acids, like branched chain amino acids, you're not going to be able to get any tryptophan through that same hole. Okay, does that make sense? And so his ability to sort of pull in and compete for the tryptophan that you need is an important thing. But this is all going to, tie back to some pathogen, right? So it's either in your brain cell, which is what I'm talking about right now, and if it's in your brain cell, then it's going to be causing competition for tryptophan down, the one pipe that you kind of have. So it's going to be sucking branched chain amino acids and glucose into that pipe, and you're trying to get tryptophan in, and it won't fit. Make sense? Okay. All right. So the other thing that could happen is our tryptophan could be being eaten by the bugs, right? So outside of our brain cells, but in other places, tryptophan has to come in our mouth. It basically has to go through a process of digestion, and then it's moved around to wherever it's needed. Okay, but there could be competition for that. And so what bugs, or do bugs eat tryptophan, first of all? So although mammals and microbes may differ in their requirements for tryptophan, being an essential amino acid in the former, microbes, former latter, no, mammals, we have to have it, yeah, and produced, with some exceptions, by bacteria and fungi. Common catabolic enzymes are shared by both host and pathogens. So are there pathogens that eat tryptophan? Yes, absolutely there are. And again, it turns out that one of those pathogens is E. coli, okay? So let me tell you why that's important and kind of what happens. So E. coli is kind of he's the guy that's going to live in your trash can. He's the guy he's easy to grow, but he's kind of the first guy that comes along if things are decaying. Okay, so if something is decaying, E. coli is just going to be there. And it doesn't matter if that's inside or outside of you. What causes meat to rot? What causes that thing on the side of the road to decay? Well, part of it is E. coli, okay? And E. coli is one of the first guys to sort of swoop in, when there's a decaying situation, all right? So if you have any kind of gut dysbiosis, right? So if you have bacteria in your gut, if you have helminths, hookworm, roundworm, pinworm in your gut, they're going to be chewing on you. You will have gastric upset. You will have, open raw tissue, let's say, in your digestive. Well, guess what E. coli like, and so they're going to just plant right there, and they're going to become part of that whole system. And they eat tryptophan, okay? So E. coli will eat tryptophan, which will cause you, basically, ultimately, to become anxious or depressed. How's that for you? That's a long way around the sideways thing. Again, there are some gram-positive bacteria that do also affect some things here, and those guys really are more on the branched chain amino acid side. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. Okay, so are there things that we can do to kill these guys? So okay, Chip, well, you told me kind of what's going on. That doesn't really help me. I'm still anxious and depressed. Help me. Okay, well, let's get some help. So again, the gram-positive bacteria, the guys that like to eat, and these are the guys that like to eat branched chain aminos. So this needs to be kind of part of the process. So if these guys get in our brains, then that's not such a good situation anyway. But we need to be able to kill them. And so one of the things that will kill these guys is garlic extract. So garlic is a super good antibacterial. The other thing is, let me see if we'll just go on the fly here, like I like to do. Apple cider vinegar is also super good. Let's see if it is for gram positive. Let's see here. Sorry, boys and girls, we're just going to go down the rabbit hole, but this is what we do. Antimicrobial activity of apple cider vinegar against E. coli, staph. Yeah, so it looks like apple cider vinegar would be kind of a really good thing for anxiety and depression, honestly. So good. That's good to know. Anyway, garlic extract will kill the gram positives, okay? Berberine will also kill the gram positives. Berberine is the most yellow substance on. I used to think curcumin from turmeric, that's what they use for yellow dye, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, nothing could be more yellow than curcumin. Yeah, berberine is the yellowest stuff you have ever seen. But anyway, it's really, really good. It blocks bacteria's ability to proliferate through something called TLR receptors, which is really cool. But he also kills gram positives, so that's a good thing. All right, so this is interesting, I thought. So you want to, the relationship between serotonin. So serotonin is ultimately what we want in our brain, but again, it comes from tryptophan. Can you eat foods to boost serotonin? Yes, eggs, cheese, pineapples, tofu, salmon, nuts, turkey. But look at also this list of boost tryptophan: cheese, chicken, eggs, fish, milk, sunflower seeds, peanuts, pumpkin seeds. Pretty much the same list, okay? So I was just showing you that because we're a big sort of decision tree, if you will. So everything that we do comes from precursors. And what are those precursors? Well, they're fats on one hand, and then there are proteins, amino acids on the other. There's 9 essential amino acids, and there's, let's say, 4 essential types of fat, all right? So everything in you is broken down from that, and some glucose, but just micro ticks of glucose, all right? So it's always sort of fun to play that game, but you guys can play that game too. And again, how do you make serotonin? Well, from tryptophan. If I eat more stuff that has tryptophan in it, will I get more serotonin? Yes, unless there's something in the decision tree that's broken, right? And that's always a possibility to examine. But you work, in that manner. You're super intelligently designed. It's, you're a cool machine. Let's just put it that way. So here's another thing that works, and you got to be careful with this because again, we all know, we've all seen every movie where the guy has to drink the water from the ocean, right? And he gets sick and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to overdo this. But salt is a really, 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 really important thing to us. And salt in, let's say, distilled water is super duper powerful. I mean, it is a very, very powerful medicine. Now you don't want to take too much salt, okay? So you don't want to take too much salt. So you need to keep that in mind with what I'm saying. And about a gram and a half of salt per serving, but you don't want to take over, let's say, 5 grams of salt a day, okay? So you need to be careful with salt. But salt is and boy, is this watch this. I'll show you. So again, I want you to look at this real quick. So although salt does not destroy all bacteria, it can kill a lot of them due to its dehydrating effects on bacterial cells. So salt will kill bacteria. Okay, so that's just the bottom line. Some bacteria are hollow tolerant, meaning they can tolerate salt. Why throw that into this, Google? So why do this, Google? Why throw that in? These guys, it's true. There are bacteria that are hollow tolerant. You find them, not on Earth and under the ocean and stuff like that. If they're not in you, generally, I have seen a few of them. But hollow tolerant bacteria can live, grow, and reproduce in salty concentrations. Yeah, but it won't affect you. So it's interesting that, when you ask this question, but watch this. This is really cool. So let me go to Google and I'll show you something cool. Is salt antibacterial? And it'll scream at me, no. Watch. Salt is the little power element that could not only sodium chloride use of a variety. Literally, I did this same thing this morning, and it came back and just told me all the reasons why it wasn't. Okay, well, this is good. So Google's not lying to me today. I guess I'm in a different IP address or whatever. So this is some truth. But again, this morning when I was going down this rabbit hole, I'm like, give me a page that says salt is antibacterial, and it wouldn't, which is interesting. So there you go, boys and girls. But again, be careful with salt, all right? So it's better to kind of go over here to the either diet or to, some of these guys. So garlic, apple cider vinegar, or berberine. We have products here, again, so if you need something, we have a product called Cleanse that's really good at wiping these guys out. Cleanse is built for almost any kind of pathogen. It'll work pretty well. It's got berberine in it, and it'll work pretty well for almost any pathogen. Okay, well, there we go. So we'll be talking about subject around kind of rest and relaxation this month, because it's rest and relaxation month, because Cindy told me it was. So there you go. So we'll be doing rest and relaxation, but we'll be talking about, I'm going to do, I think, a whole thing on salt pretty soon. Salt is a pretty important element. And there's, salt is really important in redox, R-E-D-O-X reactions. So redox reactions inside of you, which is reduction oxidation reactions. And that's your electricity. And that's how mitochondria run. That's where you get your energy from. That's how your heart beats. That's how you stay warm. That's where we get our VIV from, is mitochondria. And so those redox reactions are super important. And again, salt is important to those redox reactions. It's really interesting. The stuff that's obvious, on earth, water, salt, air, are obviously very, very important things to us. But boy, is there a lot of, BS, around those things when you look at human health. Anyway, we will see you guys next week on another exciting version of Chip Talks. Not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll talk about something regarding rest and relaxation. See you guys next